Time for another edition of the online dinner party with yours truly, Mark the Bluesman Lee. And of course, that's the nickname that some people know me as and everything like that. But we had a great event at Hayti. Got some more great events getting ready to come up as well. So we just had on last Friday the Culture in Motion, which is a salute to the Apollo. It's a traveling bus and all along those lines. And I've actually got one of the people involved with that on this particular show. But definitely they've got the Jones initiative that is part of that and all along those lines. And they're doing a lot of great work in terms of encouraging community development and all kinds of other amazing things like that. So they were here. They had about 5 or 6 featured artists, including Mavis Poole and Adia Ledbetter, who is a longtime friend, and Tamisha Wadden, and a number of others as well. And of course, Desan Ahanu was hosting it. And we even had Church the Poet performing as well. Of course, it does take a while to set up that bus. I understand it's the same people that set up the Oscar Mayer bus that people know as well. So I've got Hannah Fields joining me, and she'll be sharing what they've got going on because I think they're going down to Bennett and all along those lines, Bennett College down in Greensboro. And of course, it's a lovely day here in Durham. It was a lovely day this past Friday when they had that event, and a good friend of mine, Nikki Hall, she got a chance to perform and all along those lines. And I had some other friends that got a chance to perform and some new acquaintances as well. So it was a great event. And then on the day before, we had Britt Bennett, the author, that was here, and I think she wrote the book Vanish in Half, and I'm hoping to get her on a upcoming edition of the show as well. So definitely always great things happening here at the Hayti Heritage Center and all along those lines. And this weekend won't be much different. We've got Gina Lauren, I believe, coming along with the Slam team and others on Friday, and we've got the Haiku Slam on Saturday. And I just came back from a dedication earlier today, a dedication to the Hayti Village and all in that space. So this will be a part of the Hayti community that will have some new housing, some new apartments, and a lot of other things. I'm hoping that I can get James Montague to come on a upcoming episode of this show as well, as he is a major developer and all along those lines. But one of the other things that I do when I'm not doing the Hayti Heritage Center is I have this app, a lovely app on my phone that is called Merlin, and all along those lines. So I'll pick up Merlin and I'll listen to the various birds and all in that space. Sometimes I'm surprised by the birds that I hear, because I think I heard an osprey earlier today, and I also heard a heron and some other birds that are more common to what you might hear if you're closer to the coast and everything like that. But definitely, I also hear regularly the house sparrows and the tufted titmouse, and of course the robin that I'm convinced is determined to wake me up every morning and everything like that. Because as soon as I get up early in the morning, that robin is already singing, already having its fun, and all along those lines. So I'm gonna bring my first guest in. I am looking forward to bringing in Hannah and others as well. But I'm gonna bring in Scott, who is a bird expert and all along those lines. So how are you doing, Scott? I have
I'm,
become a big fan of Merlin, and like I said,
oh,
I've become a big fan of Merlin. Check out Merlin all the time, and I'm sitting there going like, this thing is just amazing. And sometimes I'm shocked at the birds that I hear. Like I said, I was not expecting an osprey. Definitely wasn't expecting a
yep.
heron and some of the other birds that I usually associate more with the coast and everything like that. And if I
Y-
remember correctly, you're there in the Midwest, and I actually went to college
Up?
in the Midwest as well.
Nope, actually didn't. I live in the Northeast. I live in New
Northeast, that's right,
Hampshire.
Northeast. The
Yeah, up
Northeast,
in
my
up
fault.
in up in New Hampshire. Although actually, I'm in Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up right now. I'm kind of on the
Oh,
road right now. But I couldn't agree with you more about Merlin. It's a free app from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that will identify birds by song and help you if you're new to birding. It's
mhm.
been absolutely game changing for people. It's scary good. It's
Yes.
kind of like Shazam for bird songs. It'll identify bird songs, and you can see what's singing. You can click on it. You can learn more about that bird. Um, it's been a great window into birding for people who are maybe a little intimidated. They don't know what
Mhm.
all that bird song is out there. It makes all of it completely understandable. And I have to say, the person who runs the Merlin program at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is one of my former research technicians and a good friend of mine, a fellow named Drew Weber. So I feel a little tiny shine of reflected glory from that. So yeah, if folks don't have Merlin, it's simple to use. It's completely addictive, and this is the best time because we're in the middle of the spring migration. All these birds are coming back from their wintering grounds in the Caribbean and tropical America. Orioles and thrushes and warblers and vireos and hummingbirds and tanagers, and they're all singing up a storm, and they're beautiful. They're in their spring breeding plumage. It's a great time of year to get out and see the birds.
No, it's definitely a great time. I was actually joking about that earlier because I did see some birds that were courting and all along those lines. Because just like humans like to court in the spring and summer, I'm convinced that birds like to use this as a courting time as well and everything like that. Because I don't live that far from Duke University, and I was seeing some birds that were having some playful time together, and I was determined that they were
Yep.
probably out getting their courtship on and all
Oh
along
yeah.
those.
They've come thousands of miles back on their migration, and they have one thing on their mind, and that's having babies, because that's the point of the whole migration, is to get back up here in the temperate zone, set up a territory, find a mate, build a nest, lay eggs, have babies, get those babies out and into the world, and then by that point, it's the end of summer and winter's coming on, and they turn around and they're heading back south. And some of those birds are going to be flying thousands of miles to southern South America for the winter. It's kind of an amazing thing. Bird migration's been kind of the focus of a lot of my life for a long time. Just writing about it and studying it, doing research, finding out where these birds are going, and also figuring out why our bird populations have been declining for so long and how we can turn that around. And that's what have a book that just came out called The Return of the Oyster Catcher, Saving Birds to Save the Planet. It's about bird conservation success stories at a time when I think we could all use a little bit of environmental optimism. Um, we've seen
What
we've
got you
seen
into birding and everything like that? Like I said, it was a interest of mine even as a youngster to some degree. I was actually thinking if I wasn't going to become a journalist and an event planner, are the two things that I'm primarily known for these days and everything like that, that I thought I wanted to be a weatherman and everything like that. And then I realized that you might have to do biology and other things. And I am not a big fan of blood and all along those lines. So I did not really go into the sciences. We all have our weaknesses. And one of those with me was biology and some of the hard sciences. And I also have you're talking about Latin American, where some of these birds fly to. I am not the best at foreign languages. French and Spanish were not my friends in college and everything like that. So, what got you into birding, and where did you
I
study this whole field?
I literally cannot remember a time when I wasn't into nature. The irony is that I don't have a science degree. In fact, I don't have a degree in anything. I dropped out of college the beginning of my junior year as a fine art major, and never went back, and wound up, you mentioned journalism. I ended up spending almost 10 years as a daily newspaper reporter back in the 1980s at a small newspaper in eastern Pennsylvania, learning how to write, and kind of fell into freelance writing about natural history, and also became more and more deeply involved, even though I don't have a science background, in the science of migration, mostly through bird banding. I've been a bird bander for more than 40 years, specializing in birds of prey, specializing in hummingbirds. Done a lot of work with owls. Helped start something called Project Snowstorm, which is turned into the world's largest research project focusing on snowy owls, studying snowy owl migration. Using all kinds of new tracking devices, these like hyper miniaturized fraction of a gram radio transmitters that are allowing us to track birds as small as hummingbirds across landscape distances. Yeah, it's been a wild ride for somebody who dropped out of college.
Like I said,
But ornithology from the beginning, even back in the 19th century, was very much a science of kind of committed amateurs. They were, like John James Audubon was not a scientist. Alexander Wilson was not a scientist. You didn't get a science degree in those days. You just learned by doing. And, there were some complicated people. Audubon had his pluses and he had his pretty serious minuses. He was a slaveholder.
yes.
He was not always the most honest of people, but he also showed us a lot about the natural world that nobody had noticed before. So those
Think
are
about the natural world and everything like that. As a bird observer and all along those lines, what is something that you feel that we as humans could learn from birds and everything like that? Because birds are very diverse. They have different personalities. I mean, you've got everybody from the very aggressive eagles and some of the more aggressive birds and everything like that. Because I've definitely seen eagles have a whole feast of big animals on like light poles and everything like that. And then you've got some other birds that might be a little bit more timid. And I mentioned the tufted mouse
well,
and everything like that. But what's something you think we as humans could learn from the bird population?
Oh goodness, I'm not even sure where to start. There are so many things that birds can do that we can't do.
Mhm.
Um, physiologically. Um, for example, there's a bird called the bar-tailed godwit, which is a shorebird. So, like think of a sandpiper that's about the size of a pigeon with really long legs and this extremely long bill. And bar-tailed godwits breed across much of northern Eurasia, but there's a population that actually breeds in northern and central Alaska. And every year, at the end of August and the beginning of September, thousands of bar-tailed godwits gather up along the shores of the Alaska Peninsula, and they undergo this incredible physiological change where their pectoral muscles, the muscles that power flight, increase by about 50%. Their heart muscle mass increases by about 50%. They put on so much weight. They more than double their weight in a matter of just a couple of weeks. And having gained as much weight as they possibly can, they no longer need their digestive system, so they get rid of it. Their intestines, their stomach, to a lesser extent, their kidneys and liver shrink dramatically. And then they take off and they fly anywhere from 7 to 11 days nonstop across the widest part of the Pacific Ocean. They fly almost 8,100 miles from Alaska to New Zealand and the coast of Australia. And then they land, regrow their guts, spend the austral summer feeding down there, and then come March or April, the whole process starts again. Balloon up in weight, their guts shrink down, they fly. They don't fly back across the Pacific the way they came because they had tailwinds carrying them part of the way. So they fly 6,000 miles from Australia and New Zealand to the Yellow Sea between China and Korea, land, regrow their guts, eat, double their weight, guts shrink down again. They fly another 4,000 miles back to Alaska. So like 18,000 miles a year across and around the Pacific Ocean. Um, when I hear people talk about human athletes, I think people got nothing on birds. They are the ultimate. They are the ultimate athletes.
No, I definitely believe they're the ultimate athletes. Well, I know we just had the Kentucky Derby. One of my coworkers actually went to the Kentucky Derby in terms of pod TV and all along those lines. And I know that they say that that is the fastest race because the race takes like something like about 3 to 5 minutes and all along those lines of what we see on TV. And then I realized that there are the pigeon races. And from what I understand, the pigeon race is even faster because the part that we see as the pigeons are flying, so those that are at the finish line, I see they think maybe a minute, minute and a half is my understanding by the time that the birds are able to be seen over the edge of the horizon to the time
Yep.
that they land in the pigeon coop after they have
Yep.
taken off. So that might even be like even faster than the horses and everything like that. So
Well, the fastest animal on the planet is a bird, and that's the peregrine falcon, which can hit 200 miles an hour in a dive. Faster than cheetahs, faster than horses, faster than the fastest human being. So, I mean, birds are the exemplars of the ultimate athlete.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. I want to bring in Hannah. Hannah is the person that I met during the Apollo and all along those lines because they have this culture in motion. She's actually was in Durham, but now is heading toward, or might already be in Greensboro, where Bennett College is, and everything like that. But I don't know if you know this, but there are these buses that go around, and some of these buses have been retrofitted. So this current bus, which is Culture in Motion, is celebrating the Apollo and the Apollo legacy. And I would had just met the owners of this particular Boost Bus and everything along those lines, which is Kwanzaa Jones and her husband, Jose Feliciano, and everything like that. But they just bought the Padres. So if you're a baseball fan, they just recently bought the Padres and everything along those lines. But she also was telling me when she was here, and actually Val is still here today, Ty, and told me to tell you hello and everything like that, that she also runs the Oscar Mayer bus. So we also know those Oscar Mayer buses. So I think the company is in Idaho, and so actually kind of like helped create that bus as well, that big wiener that we all know if you go to events and everything like that. So how many buses did y'all created and everything, Hannah? And how did you get into
Um,
this field?
so I don't personally work the Oscar Mayer Wiener Bus, but our company is the company that we work for. They're the ones who create all these fun buses. They're the ones who create like the blue diamond almond truck and trucks that are shaped like high heels and trucks that are like branded, So when you see like the Soundcore truck going through Los Angeles, like I was a part of that one. and we had people test out earbuds that translate up to 100 languages all across California. When you see the Google trucks come through, we work with the Google trucks. So we do a lot of the build outs and the tour managing. We drive them from state to state, from university to university, wherever that tour is going. Lime Media definitely has a part in that. Currently, I am on the Apollo Boost Bus tour with my husband. We are two of the drivers for it. So we do all the production setup, the teardown, make sure all the trucks and the materials get from point A to point B all across America. So we're hitting hopefully all 50 states. That's the plan at least. As of right now, we are still in North Carolina. We'll be in South Carolina in about a week. And then from there, Atlanta, we have Florida on our bucket list. There's a whole route where we go up and down all across the United States. So it's definitely fun to be a part of. The fabricators and the construction guys who work at the shop, they're out of Dallas, Texas. Amazing people. Our activation managers that work out of the offices there are wonderful. Like, they definitely make sure that we have everything that we need and that our trucks can handle the terrain, that they if anything goes wrong, like, they'll fly out and fix it, or if it's something small that we can fix, we do a lot of that. But I love that you guys are bird people. I am a bird person. I carry my owl with me on my arm. I used to own a lot of like smaller birds.
Let me see
What'd
your
you say?
owl.
It's
So
an
it's a
owl
barn
in a
owl.
tree. Yep.
That's one of the. I've been studying owls for the better part of 30 years. So
I absolutely love it. I was young. There was one that would always sit out perched on this church outside of my bedroom window. Like, every night it was out there, and I just saw it as like my little guardian angel kind of thing. So
Good.
owls have been a part of my life my entire life.
Super.
Just really quickly along those same lines and everything, because it's something I bring up on this show regularly, and we even talk about it here at the center and everything like that. But how you mentioned you work with your husband and y'all are traveling all over. If I remember correctly, you're from one of the I states. It's either Idaho or Iowa. I can't remember which one
Yeah.
it is.
I'm the one from the Midwest there. Iowa
Right, so
is where we currently live. We're from Kentucky.
you might be breaking up a little bit, but they're
Having our home base in Iowa is really nice because we can like get away from the cities. We live in a really small town. It's called Maquoketa. I love it. It's just a cute little artsy town. A lot of people grow flowers. I have a very large garden there. And it's just nice to get away from the cities and go to our little Midwest corner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But both of you, how do you manage that work-life balance? I can't remember if Scott, if you told me you were married or had a significant other, but how do you manage that work-life balance? Because that's something I oftentimes talk about on this show. I don't have to deal with that because I don't have a significant other and don't have any kids of my own and everything like that. Even though I do have a nephew, the oldest nephew is actually getting ready to go graduate from college, and he'll be actually heading to Greensboro to UNCG in August. So he'll be going there August 18th. My brother was teasing him like, you need to find a dorm room when we were hanging out on Mother's Day and everything like that. But he was being a typical teenager. He didn't want to deal with that responsibility as of right now and everything like that. So how do y'all deal with that work-life balance? And this is for both of you.
Well, I am married. My wife is works. She's also in conservation and birds. She works for the Massachusetts Audubon Society, and she works really hard. I do a lot of traveling, including a lot of international travel for my job. I'm going to be down in Colombia, for example, later this year on an ornithological expedition. I'll be in Alaska in a couple of weeks. This last book I was working on, I spent a lot of time in Europe. I was in the UK. At one point, I was in southern Romania, about a quarter of a mile from the Ukrainian border, on a night when Russia launched a missile attack on Ukraine, which was really exciting because in the middle of the night, suddenly there were air raid sirens just like less than a mile away. We weren't sure what was going to happen. The missiles landed far upriver. I was not in any danger, although I didn't really know that at the time. So yeah, it can be tricky. Right now I'm on the road doing a lot of promoting this new book about bird conservation. So I'm away from home a lot, and that's not fun. We live in a rural part of New Hampshire, 150 yards off a dirt road. So I like the peace and quiet of country living. But I'm doing a lot of traveling right now. But I'll be back home pretty soon. And my wife is so busy. Sometimes I'm not sure that she even notices if I'm gone. She's runs all of the Massachusetts Audubon Society's sanctuary system. So she's responsible for a huge number of people and like 120 properties around the state of Massachusetts that are wildlife sanctuaries. So we make it work. We had our 20th anniversary last year. So far so good.
Congratulations.
Hannah, what about you guys? I mean, you're traveling with your husband.
Yeah, how does that happen?
Yep.
You're traveling
So,
together.
yeah, most of our relationship, we were in construction, we were painters, so we kind of got used to traveling with that in our early years. This is our 10-year anniversary, so congratulations to your 20. Maybe we'll see it there in about another decade.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I started picking up a lot more brand work over the last decade, and he kind of continued with the construction for a while, but I was like gone more and more often. So this past year, he was like, you know what? Like, if we're gonna, do this, like, I want to come with you. If you're going to all these cool cities and you're experiencing all these things every week, like, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So he left construction and he joined me on the road, and we ended up getting this tour together that will go all the way through the year. So we get to spend an entire year on the road together. We don't have children. We do have like animals. We have a dog. He's a golden doodle named Pepperoni. And I turn our adventures into children's stories. So Pip has 3 published books. And every time we go to new places with him, that becomes a children's story. So he's got his own little brand that I do along the way. We do have 2 cats as well, but our cats are at my mom's house for now. Since this is such a long tour, I didn't want them to be neglected or stay home or anything.
Yeah.
We've had them for about 5 years. They're super sweet, but they're related to my mom's cat, so it kind of worked out that they were able to go to her farm. She lives out in Kentucky on like a big open plot of land with a pond, so they're living their best life.
Sounds like they're living their best life and everything. And it sounds to me like you have an inspiration just in the sense of having the folks that you are working with, which is, like I said, Miss Jones, who I know was an Apollo winner, and her husband, who was a philanthropist and everything like that. But it seems to me from I just met them for the first time, that they are very down to earth. You would not know that they are billionaires and all along those lines. And it also seems, if I was correct, that they had their children late in life, because if she's graduated in 93, then she must have been in her 50s now and everything like that. So that means that they had children when they were in their 40s and all along those lines. So am I not doing my math correctly, or was she a late life mom?
She is a late life mom. She has a sweet, sweet little boy that came on to one of our last events. Like, she brought him out with her husband. Kwanzaa is amazing. A genuinely kind, beautiful soul. She will treat everybody with respect and kindness. It doesn't matter if she knows you or not. She is going to hug you. She's going to greet you, and she's going to treat you like you are just as important as anybody else there. And she does not hold herself to like some kind of pedestal. She is very down to earth. She's just a genuine person, and I absolutely love that I get to be a part of her tour and be a part of like what she's bringing to the world. For this tour, it's all about art and history, culture. It's about capturing like all these monument and historical places, but also like bringing the music, the passion, the art to everywhere. So we have some stops that go to schools, like preschools, kindergartens, and the kids get to just have dance parties and they get to color and play outside. We do some larger events where we have multiple performers, like we did over at the Haiti Center. We had, I believe, 6 there. They can scale up. Like, we have smaller events than that, but we also have much larger ones too, where the team from LA and New York all fly in, and we may have 30 or 40 people coming together to put on a very large event. So they're a lot of fun to be a part of. There's always really good food. There's always really nice people and really good performers. I love that when we do the university stops, the kids that go to the school can come inside the recording studio aspect of the bus. It's the back room, and they get a file of their own recording. So whether they're singing, doing poetry, playing music, we send those files directly to them, and then they get to keep that. That's like a kickstart into their career line.
Yep, definitely a great Kickstarter. This is supposed to, I'm bringing my other guest as well, Leanne Pritchett, but this is something that I oftentimes bring up on this show as well as other shows that I'm involved in. And I mentioned that whole work-life balance and everything, but I am and you kind of alluded to it, Hannah, and everything like that. But I know that I am not the best in terms of that inner critic and everything like that. It doesn't matter whether it's relationships, because I'm still in my 60s and still single and all along those lines, or whether it's jobs, because I've even not gone for jobs that I probably should have gone for, because I can be my worst critic and sometimes have those inner conversations with myself where I talk myself out of things, whether that's a relationship or whether that's a job or whether that's a opportunity and everything like that. So as two very confident people, you, Scott, in birding, and you with all that you're doing with these bus trips and all along those lines, I'm bringing Leanne as well. How do y'all get past this whole notion of the inner critic and us being our worst enemy? Because you are definitely very strong, confident people. I'm seeing that and hearing that in your voices and everything like that. So I want to hear from Hannah, but I also want to hear from you, Scott, and also bring in Leanne as well. How do you get past that? Listen to that little voice that'll tell you that you're not good enough, whether it's in life or relationships or just in general.
So I would say, like, when you really like zoom out in your perspective of it, you only get this one life, and what you is going to be the memories that you're going to hold on to forever. It's going to be the stories you pass down to your kids or your grandkids, or even that you write about. Whether you have kids or not, it doesn't matter. It's more about writing your story. So I've always been the kind of person that never let things stop me. I was like the full throttle kid. You put me on a dirt bike, I'm probably going to run into the fence because I didn't hold back. But I'm also the person that like tried any and everything that I wanted to try. I spent 8 years in college switching my majors like 4 or 5 times because I just wanted to learn. I was addicted to learning new things and developing skills and talents. And the inner critic is always there. I mean, you're going to have that still small voice. That is your comfort zone. That's your comfort zone saying, maybe you shouldn't do that. But would it be better if you just did? Because what's the worst that's going to happen? You could break an arm, or you could get told no to an opportunity, but you tried and you put yourself out there, and nothing really bad happens when you follow that just instinct to just try. Your comfort zone's always going to try to hold you back. It's always going to tell you like either no, you can't do that, or no, you're not good enough, but you are. If you're good enough to have the thought to do it, you are good enough to pull it off. You are worthy to try it, and you're going to feel so much better that you did, that you just went out there. So whether it's a relationship and it fails or it succeeds, you're never going to know until you try it. Whether it is a job opportunity that you get into and 3 months later you're like, oh, I hate this. You can quit. You can change your life at any time. You are in control of your life. You are in control of your opportunities. You're in control of your destiny. You just have to put yourself out there and allow the universe, allow life to guide you and make changes. Don't hold on to something so tight that you're afraid to try something new. I am a multi-talented artist, but I also am like super ADHD and I have all these different things that I like to do, but I never tell myself like, oh, I'm not going to be good at this. It doesn't matter if I'm good at it. If I like to do it, if I want to paint it and it sucks, that's fine. If I want to try to write a book and it doesn't get bought, that doesn't matter. I wrote the book. So I tried the skill, I put myself out there, and I had fun doing it. It doesn't have to be the thing that makes you $1 million. It doesn't have to be the thing that makes you famous. It's more about you wanted to do something, so you did it. No matter how anybody feels about it, no matter what anybody thinks about it, you put yourself out there. I try to bring that to what I do in Iowa. I have a business back home. It's called Fairyland Fields, and it is essentially a fantasy photography garden. So kids and families can come. They get all dressed up. We have people come and do their hair and makeup, but it's about empowering them to love themselves and to try something new, to see themselves through a different lens. So we'll get them dressed up like princesses or fairies or elves. It doesn't matter, boys, girls. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. We service anybody that wants to be a part of the magic. And the whole point of it is to bring out their self-esteem, to bring out their confidence, and to teach them skills. So we do painting in the garden days. We teach them how to make jellies and jams and just all kinds of different fun stuff. We have monthly events that change. Right now, being on the road, it's hard to to focus on that aspect because I'm not home. But when I am off the road, like that is what I dive into full force. I work with a lot of the kids throughout the schools that surround our property, and we're right next to a park. So everybody gets to see like what I build when I'm home, and they can be a part of it too. The kids who come to work in the garden, they earn fairy bucks and like fairy gold coins, and then they can spend them at the farm stand on produce or lavender lemonades or whatever it is that we have in season at the time. But I just genuinely love like boosting up the community, boosting up children especially, and showing people that you are capable of anything that you want to put your mind to. So, I mean, that's my stance on it, but I would love to hear y'all's as well.
No, I appreciate that. And by the way, I'm beginning to think that you must be related to my younger brother because my younger brother works with at-risk youth, even though I don't necessarily like that term because I think it puts kids in like a bucket and all along those lines. But he's been doing that for a number of years, probably a decade or two, and all along those lines. But he also went through multiple careers as well. Because at one time he thought he wanted to be a business degree person, then he thought he wanted to be involved in construction management and a number of other fields. It took him a while to get his degree. I think it took him at least a decade, if not more than a decade, to get his first degree, and then he got a master's, and then life got in the way, so he was in the way to getting the PhD. But I think that right now it's too much kind of like things that are going on with his own child going off to college and a lot of other things. So it doesn't mean the PhD won't happen, but Dr. Malik won't be happening anytime soon, I don't think, because he's got to get some other things in order, and he's also got some health issues that he's dealing with as well. So like I said, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen, but I loved your attitude. But I was going like, I wonder if it's related to our family. We don't know it because it definitely sounded like very similar to what I've heard from my brother and even myself and everything. What's your take on that, Scott, in terms of like how you deal with that inner critic?
Well, actually, I'd love to hear from Leanne because we haven't really heard anything from Leanne yet.
Yeah, Leanne.
Yes, I'm sorry. I had an emergency at work. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
But so, and let me see if I understand the question. By the way, thank you, Hannah. I appreciated what you had to say there about quelling the inner critic. Is that correct? Kind of like
right. Yes.
Okay. So I agree with a lot of that. Having worked with the special needs populations for over 20 years now, right now I'm currently working with the visually impaired, blind and visually impaired. And so tips and tricks for it, because we all have an inner critic, and I'm like my worst critic ever. I actually have them flip the script. And instead of I can't do, I'm not doing, think about what you do and your strengths and the positivity that you bring to this world. And whether we braille a list, whether we write it on a Post-it note and stick it on your mirror, wherever they can see it and affirm it every day, it's there. We're going to see it if they have to touch it because you can't see, whatever it might be, make a recording, whatever. Just so the positive will somehow not outweigh, but like you'll get more of these positive vibes coming into your head, and there's so much power in words and language. And that way they're like, okay, well, I'm a really strong auditory learner. And so it replaces a lot of that. And so they're seeing more of the positive in them. So they're kind of telling the critic, all right, I understand where you're coming from, but you know what? No, let's redo things and let's rethink things. So that's what I have found helps for that.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate it, Leanne. I know that you've been on a couple of other shows before and everything like that. And one thing that I talk about on this network quite often, and I am a big fan of it, and Hannah actually kind of alluded to it with some of the things that she's doing with the fairy tales and even some of the things that she's doing on the Apollo trip and all along those lines. But what is your thoughts around play? Because sometimes I think that we don't give enough sense for play and all along those lines. So definitely, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts, and I'm actually going to have to get off camera for a minute, just on the play and the importance of play.
Well, I mean,
I think releasing your inner child is incredibly important. That's why I love working with children, because it reminds me of my youth and the things that would have made me a better person, like over the long run, had I never let go of that.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go.
And
that you miss out on so much of that younger, like inner child. And then as you get older, you start to embrace it even more. So I find myself like, as like a granny hobby kind of person, I absolutely love to crochet and sew and garden and can my own vegetables. But then I also love to play in the dirt, and I love to paint, and I love to make a mess. And then embracing my inner child and learning to play again was such a healing aspect of my life that I was able to let go of, oh, I have to be this strong, independent, grown woman. I started college at 13 years old, and I was like rushing my life. I moved out at 16. I was like providing for myself at a very young age. So by the time I got in my mid 20s, I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I miss so much of my youth by trying to be grown too fast. And I feel like kids these days are absolutely trapped in that mindset. You have middle schoolers and high schoolers that feel the need to like reach these beauty standards and these society standards, and they don't have to do that yet. So with what I do with Fairyland is to remind them that it's okay to be a child. It is okay to have fun. It is okay to play. I even take women who are, 50, 60, 70 years old, and we get them dressed up and we do their makeup and we let them feel like that inner child is released again. And for a lot of them, they haven't felt that in years. They have been the mother, they've been the grandmother, they've been the hardworking philanthropist or entrepreneur. They're so integrated into what they do that they forget like who they were and who they are. So I absolutely love play. I think that you should enjoy your life, not just work. I do work a lot, but we also make time to stuff. We're actually going to go zip lining at the world's tallest zip line in a few days. So I'm excited. I'm nervous. It's one of those things your inner critic is like, maybe you shouldn't do that. It's dangerous. But my inner child is like, full send. Just do it and live it and have fun. So I would love to hear from you guys, though.
Well, I'm really lucky because I get to do for a living what I would probably do for fun anyway. I love to write. I love studying the natural world. I enjoy anything having to do with birds. It's kind of like getting paid to eat ice cream. I get to travel the world to see amazing places and hang out with remarkable people and share their stories with other folks. Maybe help make the world a little bit better. Drive the notion of conservation a little bit further. But yeah, I've been joking for 40 years that one of these days I'm going to have to get myself a real job, but it hasn't happened yet. So.
What is a real job? I'm not sure what those are because I work multiple jobs because I do grading of test papers for a company. I also work here at the center as a event planner and a staff historian and all along those lines. And then I also do some of the events. Ironically, and Hannah doesn't know this, I did tell Kwanzaa this, but we actually had a Apollo show here at the Haytide for about 12 years or something like that, where we actually had a agreement with the Apollo where we got to take the winners around, and kind of like they're traveling around the state. Around the country. We travel around the state. So we did it for about 2 years here at the Haytide Heritage Center, which is a converted AME church and everything, and it's been a performing arts space for 51 years. So we started it back in 2014, I believe was the year that it started. My friend Captain Newborn and several other friends were involved in the production of it. And then we had all the symbols of the Apollo. So we had our own log that we had our own house band, our own Sandman, our own rotating Kiki Shepherds. And I think we had about 2 Sandmen and everything like that. And then we would have winners that would be picked. And if you know anything about contests like this, they are oftentimes long lines, whether it's the Apollo, whether it's American, and everything like that. We got to jump the line. We had an arrangement. We got to jump the line. So I was with Sharpton.
How are you?
Got to drive up to the front.
I would like to buy this, and I should have an Amazon package.
I don't think you realize.
Hannah Fields. We actually checked out and switched hotels yesterday, and then I had to drive back for my stuff.
Yeah. We put it on mute there for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, we had that going on, and then we took it around the state of North Carolina. So I know we went to Henderson, we went to Captain's hometown of Kinston, we went down to Fayetteville, we went down to Rocky Mount. So we went to about 10 or 12 different areas in the area. It might have even been as many as 20. I'd have to ask my photographer and good buddy Martin that came with us on many of those shows and took the pictures, because we had our own staff photographer and everything like that. But it was fun, and we definitely enjoyed doing that and everything like that. So that was another one of the jobs that I've had. And then I've also done this whole podcast and that thing in addition to working in radio. So yeah, what's this notion of having one job? I don't know what that is and everything like that. So Scott, you got to explain to me how people have one job, because most of my friends, including some of my friends that are in music, they oftentimes will be driving Uber or Lyft or driving DoorDash or a number of other things. So I don't know that many people that I'm convinced there's two things, and maybe Leanne's got an idea of this as well. One,
What?
that nobody has one job really, and two, there is no such thing as really called retirement. Because even my mom, even though she's retirement, I think she serves on like maybe at least one or two boards, and she's definitely the matriarch of our family. My dad, who is 85, is still a very active artist. I mean, a visual artist and photographer and everything
Well,
like that. So I'm
I'm
convinced that retirement is not a real word.
I'm visiting my mother in Pennsylvania, who will turn 89 this year, and
Oh, wow.
she's out on a real estate call right now. She's still working as a realtor.
Yeah.
Wakes up every morning at 3:30, is out of bed by 4:30, does 45 minutes of exercises and yoga.
Mhm.
I I got a long way to go to catch up to her.
Well, see, it's interesting for me because special ed and being a teacher, my mind is always going, even if I'm not at work, because I do have one main job. But my mind's always at work because I work with the blind and visually impaired. So I will sit there and go, oh, wait, that street crossing is incorrect. Or I will look at something and go, oh, that braille is not brailled right. Or like my head is literally going all the time if I'm not at work. So in terms of like not retiring or not stopping, yeah, my mind's always going like that's not accessible, or so I do that a lot too. So
Yep.
yeah.
Hey, Leanne, I got this actually from your profile on podcast, but I think it's a question that I've asked similarly to other people as well. But I'd love to hear from Scott and everything, and if Hannah is able to come back on. I knew she was dealing with some stuff on the trip and everything like that. But and I'm acknowledging that I got it from your podcast questions and everything like that. But I think it's a legitimate one, and I've asked something similar and all along those lines. But so I'll start with you, Scott. Who was someone that that believed in you when no one else did? Because I know that even in my case, my mom is one of my biggest advocates, and there are others that are advocates as well. So I mentioned earlier that sometimes we got folks that we can be our worst enemies, but who was somebody that was actually like your advocate?
Well, I mean, there were people who took a chance on me that really had no reason to. You mentioned your background in journalism. I spent 10 years as a small town newspaper reporter, and came with no journalism background at all, no writing experience. The editor of what was then one of the best small newspapers in the country in eastern Pennsylvania, a newspaper called the Pottsville Republican. They had just, the year I started working for them, they had just won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting, which gives you a sense of how top of the heap these folks were.
Right.
I was 19. Why he thought I had anything worth saying, I don't really know. But he took a chance on me. I started writing a weekly natural history column for them that led to a full-time reporting job that led to my discovering that I really loved to write. And that led to what's now been an almost 40-year career as a freelance writer, writing at this point almost 30 books and innumerable magazine articles. I've been able to make my living doing the thing that I like best, writing about the things that interest me the most. That wouldn't have happened if Doug Costello, the newspaper editor, hadn't taken a chance on me. I wouldn't have had the background for doing any of this. So, it's just, sometimes you meet the right person at the right time, and that was a good example of meeting the right person at the right time. I've been a very lucky person over the years in the mentors I've had, the experiences I've had that have caused a pivot in my life that I could have gone one way and went a different way. No complaints at all.
Yeah, it makes sense. What about you, Leanne? Who's somebody that really inspired you, that was your advocate when you needed an advocate?
Yeah, other than my parents, my tutors actually, going through elementary school in the 80s, they just started learning about learning disabilities. And a lot of my teachers back then were just telling my mom, no, have her stick with modeling. Don't have her go into any education. She's not going to go anywhere in life. Really told me I couldn't. And my tutors, I went for them from when I was 5 until I was 17. So they saw me grow up. They helped me actually learn to read and write, and to associate the right letter with the right sound, putting it all together. All of that. I had a hard time writing. I didn't know where the lines started and stopped on a piece of paper. I mean, so it was very, very difficult. And I had not only reading and writing, but math difficulties as well. And social
That's,
difficulties, like almost
and
like
that's me too.
Yeah.
I cannot do math. And
Yeah.
I went to school in the 60s and 70s
Yeah.
before learning disabilities were really widely recognized. And I was simply told over and over again that I just was not applying myself. And what they
Right.
didn't know is that I was applying myself as hard as I could. It just didn't make any sense to me. Numbers
Exactly.
continue to not make any
You
sense
say
to
that,
me.
Scott, because I think the last time I had Leon on, I mentioned this to her and everything, because I've been diagnosed a long time ago with dysgraphia, which means that me and left and right are not the best of friends and everything like that. And I did go to Marquette, which is a major Jesuit university. I convinced that we had 2 minors because we had to have about 21 hours of theology and religion. I think that's still the rule and everything like that. And I can't remember whether it was 12 and 9 or 9 and 12, meaning philosophy versus theology, but it was still mounted to a minor in religious studies as far as I'm concerned, with my regular minor being poli-sci. But I was not diagnosed until after I graduated from college. So I probably was still dealing with it even in high school in the 70s and definitely in college in the early 80s and everything like that. I was diagnosed, I want to say late 80s and everything along those lines. And I'm convinced to this day, because I have probably one of the worst handwritings of all and everything. Some people would call it a doctor's type handwriting and all along those lines. So I'm convinced that some of my teachers were probably given seeing the points that I was making, seeing that it was valid enough points, and then not trying to struggle to read everything that I was writing, because they probably like, I'm not going to be able to make this out. I give up. So they were probably not too pleased with my handwriting and were just making sure that I made some valid points in whatever they could make out and everything like that. So that's just my guess, and I could be wrong. There might have been more better teachers than I've been giving them credit for. But I do know that I was not diagnosed until well late in life and everything like that. So what is y'all's take? Because I do know that you're right. Even now, a lot of times people are maybe misdiagnosed and everything like that, because even sometimes people are just hyperactive and maybe they do have attention deficit. I was talking to somebody recently and they sounded like they had what we would now call as being kind of like in the spectrum, but they would, at that time, I think they would put in a mental institution and everything like that, all along those lines. But at the time they were, and this might have been in the 60s or the 70s, but now they would be called being on the spectrum. So it is probably more widely recognized than it was back in the day. But what's your take on that, Leanne?
So this is an interesting point that you brought up. It's very interesting because on one hand, technology is great. It's let us know about a lot of things, such as our learning disabilities, autism, which is a spectrum, and a lot of that. So it's good that the information is out there, but at the same point, it's very easy to get a misdiagnosis because the information is out there. And until a specialist goes through and you go through the proper testing for it, it happens more often than we realize and that we think. And a lot of teachers will be like, oh, I see this, so he must be this. And they'll label somebody. And I've had to take a lot of years of training and say, okay, he has these type of tendencies. However, since I'm not an MD, so I don't diagnose, but I see it happen a lot with a lot of people. Because on the one hand, you want to help and get them the help they need, so you get the ball rolling. But then on the other hand, you have to be careful not to overdiagnose, because it happens a lot. So it's one of those things. It's a tricky line.
Yeah, definitely a tricky line and everything. Scott, I've got to tease you because coming back to the birds and everything like that. Other than those birds that we know are hurt, because like I said, I know that sometimes birds are not the best at having their own senses, because even here at the Haytide, we have some birds that will sometimes run into these glass windows that we have and they commit basically suicide and all of those.
Well, except, let me just say this in the defense of the birds. They see a reflection. They think they can fly through it. We lose almost 1 billion birds a year in the United States to window collisions. It's second only to cats for the number of birds that are killed. Cats kill between 2 and 4 billion birds a year in the United States. It's not the birds' fault. They're not committing suicide. They think they see a forest that they can fly through. They don't understand glass. I mean, they've been out there since they're dinosaurs, basically. They've been around since before the Cretaceous. Glass is new. And so, anything that we can do to reduce that, because we're seeing bird populations are declining year after year after year after year. There are fewer and fewer birds coming back on migration every year. And anything that we can do to reduce that, and there's a lot of things people to do. If you've got birds flying into your window, there's simple treatments that you can put on your window There's a company called Feather Friendly that makes these little tiny dots. They're UV reflective because birds can see in the ultraviolet range, which we can't. So you put these little dots on your windows just in a grid pattern. It's, it's like looking through it, not even like looking through a screen. It doesn't really interfere with your ability to see through the window, but to the birds, it will look like a solid object and they won't fly into it. And, if we all did that, we could make a huge difference for birds. So, two simple things to do for birds: do something to your windows and keep your cats inside. And it'll make it a better world for birds.
That makes a lot of sense. Everything. What do you say for those people? Because even here at the center, we sometimes have been concerned about the fact that sometimes if the doors are open and these are large, kind of like doors and everything like that, they will sometimes fly in, and sometimes when they fly in, they're not that easy to get out and everything like that. So on that same advice realm for, like, say, stores or other buildings that have kind of those large glass doors that sometimes open, what advice would you give to people that are finding birds flying into their building in order to get them out safely?
What's interesting, some birds will figure out how to do that intentionally. If you've got a big store and you've got house sparrows or starlings around, they're smart. They'll figure out how to use. They'll actually hover in front of the motion detector and open the doors and fly in and forage for. Well, like, for example, our local big box Home Depot style store, they sell birdseed, and a lot of the birdseed spills. And the house sparrows fly in and out all the time. They know how to get in and out of the building. Now, if it happens at your home, you just want to gently herd the bird toward an open window. One of the things, if you live in an area where you've got hummingbirds and you have a garage, be real careful about leaving the garage door open, because usually there's that emergency pull that has a red handle, and the hummingbird will fly in thinking that's a flower, and sometimes it'll get up in the rafters of the garage, and they can get stuck up there until the point where they become exhausted and die. So you do want to be careful about that. But
yeah, that makes sense. You want to be careful around their safety and making sure that they are in good safety zones and all along those lines. So I can understand that. Now, the other animals that are not quite birds related, but we have quite a bit of them in our area here in Durham, but I don't know how they get along with each other. But how do birds get along with bats? Because I know that even here, because this is an old converted church, that there are a lot of times of bats that are here, and Merlin doesn't always recognize the bats because it's recognizing birds and bird calls, but it does.
No, yeah, Merlin just does bird songs. It doesn't do bat calls. No, there's really very little overlap between the two. Most of our birds are diurnal. They're active in the daytime. The bats are nocturnal. They're often feeding on, depending on the bird, they're often feeding on the same kinds of insects. Bats are taking a lot of beetles and large moths, and birds like chuck-wills, widows, and whippoorwills, the nightjars, are feeding on the same. But there's not really a lot of competition. And in parts of the tropics, there are some raptors that specialize in feeding on bats, including one called the bat falcon, which is this really small, beautiful, kind of orange-bellied falcon. Some of the owls, like black and white owls, will specialize in feeding on bats, but there's not a whole lot of overlap between the two of them. Anything you can do to help bats is good, because we've lost a huge percentage of our bat population in Eastern North America in the last 20 years because of a disease called white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that was accidentally brought over from Europe, probably on the boots of spelunkers, cave explorers.
Right.
And it's gotten into North American bat populations during the winter time when they're hibernating in caves, and it irritates them. It grows around their nose. It grows on the surface of their skin. They become irritated. They wake up a lot during the hibernation. They end up burning up a lot of their energy and they die. Unfortunately, they don't have enough energy to make it through to springtime. So with some of what had been our most common species of bats, like little brown bats and pipistrelles, these hibernating bats, their populations have dropped by like 90, 95, 80, 98%. Because of this, unexpected disease that was brought in accidentally. It wasn't anybody's fault. They didn't do it intentionally. They just kind of hitchhiked on the boots of folks coming over who'd been in caves, and probably in Ukraine, based on some of the DNA work they've done.
It's interesting you use that term, and I forgot what it is because I'm horrible with definitions sometimes. But it's the one between night animals and day animals and everything. Because that actually came up during the Mother's Day. Because my mom had a flower pot that had been turned over and ravaged. She was convinced that it was one of the animals, like a squirrel or something like that, or maybe even. But my brother was making the observation, which is a true observation, that squirrels are not. Nighttime raiders and everything
That's
like
right.
that. They are out in the daytime. So this was
Probably.
during the daytime, and it turned out that it was probably because we saw it during the day and everything. My brother had brought one of the dogs that his mom was supposed to have been taken care of, but she's in her 80s, and that dog was going to drive her crazy because it was an energetic dog and all along those lines. But he does come, Walter does, to visit mom during holidays like Mother's Day or Christmas and stuff like that. And we did observe that there was a cat out there. So the guilty party was probably those cats that are also kind of murdering. And I am a fan of both cats and dogs, but it's probably one of those cats that's also part of the guilty things in terms of taking out birds and all along those lines. But yeah, we did realize that it was not the squirrel because my younger brother, who I just mentioned earlier, was like,
Yeah.
squirrels don't come out at nighttime.
Well, not most squirrels. We do have flying squirrels that are nocturnal, but they're so tiny they can't do anything. They're not going to mess with a flower pot. My first thought was a raccoon. That's the sort of thing a raccoon would do.
Yeah, and we did think of raccoon. We thought of raccoon. We did think of groundhog. We did think of stuff like that until we saw the guilty party and all of those. So they kind of like made themselves be known and everything like that.
Yep.
So sometimes they will do that. One of the things I've asked, and I know it's actually one of Leanne's questions that she even put out there, but it's one that I have also asked just on my own and everything along those lines. What, other than birding, because like I said, I just discovered Merlin, and I do love to put it in on my various phones and hearing the various birds and everything like that. But what is a hobby for both of you that you have that people would be surprised to know is a hobby of yours? Like I said, I know a friend of mine that now is going to have me on their theater board or a theater group that they are part of and everything. But they at one point wanted me to go into skydiving. And I'm sorry, to me, planes have a purpose. It's to go from point A to point B. It's not to fall out of, but that's just me and everything like that. I have considered an equally dangerous whitewater rafting, but I still am not trying to fall out of a plane because that's tens of thousands of feet above the air. So I'm not trying to fall out of something that far and everything like that. Even though I'm sure there's safety hazards, but I just don't want to take the chance. But what is a hobby or an interest that you have that folks might be surprised to know is yours?
Go ahead, Leanne.
Me? Oh,
Sure.
gosh. All right. Well, people that know me know, like, I'm very much a cancer, like a homebody when I'm at home. So, like, the hobbies they know about, they're not going to be surprised, like sewing, baking, cooking. But I love TV theme shows from the 70s on, like 70s to like 2000. And I was one of those people that had like the shoebox size tape recorder, and I used to go up to the TV and record the songs before you could get the lyrics online. And I would listen to them and write them down. And I made like this whole big binder of like all my favorite ones. And I have them memorized and everything. Yeah, I'm very much a nerd when it comes to that stuff. I love the TV. I love, I've been to like tons of Comic-Cons. I'm a Comic-Con person, stuff like that, sci-fi, all that. So
Two things that you said caught my interest. One is that Comic-Con has all kinds of things that go on in the Comic-Con world. And a couple of weeks ago, me and a friend of mine would go out once a month to a restaurant of either his picking or my picking, just a random one, because he also knows that I'm a Yelp reviewer and all along those lines. So the last time we went, it was one near downtown Durham, and it was at the same time that the furries were here, which means that there were a lot of people dressed, speaking of cats and dogs, they were dressed as cats, dogs, leopards, and everything else that could possibly be out there and everything like that. And one of our other things, and that's what crossed my mind as well, one of our other guests on this network and everything like that, we have a couple of folks that are have a claim on this network. So Rick Rosner, who sometimes appears on our news show, actually he regularly appears on our news show because he's a very smart cookie and all along those lines, but he was also known for two famous things. One, he sued Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and won because he got the answer right and they thought it was wrong, but he didn't really win a lot of money because that still means taking on Disney and everything like that. So I think it wasn't, even though he did win the acknowledgement that he was right, he didn't win it in the sense of financial rewards because it probably would have been too much to fight that big mammoth company and everything like that. But at least he can truthfully say that he got the correct answer and it has been proven by the courts and everything. But then there's another guy that is, speaking of theme songs, he's very much in the weed activism space and everything like that and all along those lines. And his sister was one of the writers for Cheers. So Jim, Jeff Icahn is definitely a person that is involved with like Cheech and Chong and getting people out of jail that have been convicted for weed and everything like that. With his sister, that I remember correctly, was the sister was a producer on Cheers. And whenever I think of theme songs, that is definitely one that I think of regularly, all along those lines. So definitely
Where
in that
everybody
vein.
knows your name.
Back with it as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Hannah, is there any popular theme song that you're a big fan of?
Oh, geez. Theme songs?
TV theme songs.
Oh, TV theme songs. The George Lopez one, because I used to wake up to it about every morning before school. It just comes on the TV and, he's jumping on the trampoline. That one's stuck in my head forever.
Yeah, that one would definitely stick in your head. Happy Days will stick on your head. Welcome Back, Carter will stick in your head.
Yeah.
There are a number of those that are earworms, as they like to call them, and everything like that. They are definitely going to stick in your head forever. Even the All in the Family theme song and the ones for the Jeffersons and Sanford and Son and a number of others as well. So definitely,
Friends.
Different
Friends.
generations here.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, you can tell the generational difference as well. Hannah, I was asking Leanne and Scott, somebody that was really encouraging them that when they weren't getting the encouragement from outside sources or from their family. So who is somebody that was a real encourager to you, that was like somebody that really believed in you, maybe when nobody else really believed in what you were doing?
I had this woman that me and my mom used to volunteer at a pregnancy center in Kentucky and just kind of like helping out moms. There was a woman who ran that. She also works on the radio station. It's like a Christian family radio station in Kentucky. Her name was Bridget, and Bridget was absolutely like such a sweetheart, such an intelligent woman, and she was always like in my corner. She was always like giving me advice, just trying to help me like become a better person and live a better life. And her connection to like people was just so genuine. But she was somebody that like, she wasn't related to me. She didn't have to go above and beyond for me, but she was always there. If I did any type of, like, sometimes we would host events, like charity events, and raise toys for tots or do Humane Society stuff. She would show up. She would participate. She would always let me, like, come into the radio station and get flyers. She would give shout outs online. No matter what we were doing, she just kind of was that little voice that boosted us up, that was just very involved in our life too. That's just who she was in the whole community. She was a very sweet woman, but I would say Bridget was probably my go-to like mentor. That she didn't have to be, but she was.
It sounds like an amazing mentor. And Hannah, and this is for both you and Scott, because I never heard Scott's answer either. And I was joking earlier before you came back, Hannah, that I had a ex that wanted me to go skydiving. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to fall out of a plane. That's just me and everything like that. But what is a interest of yours there, or a hobby that you have been contemplating or would be interested in doing that you haven't got around to doing yet, and everything like that? I did say that I had contemplated because a friend of mine wanted to write a book. They were actually involved with the Clarence Thomas hearings, because they were one of the people that was going to testify for Anita. I think it was Anita Thomas or Anita Thomas Hill or something like that. But they were going to testify for her, and they were writing a book, one of those adventure books that involved whitewater rafting. And I was like, that looks like that could be cool. And I even thought about doing that with the Eno Festival here, because they have Frog Hollow, which will let you go rafting and everything like that. So I have thought about either rafting or whitewater rafting, even though that can be dangerous, but and maybe equally as dangerous as falling out of a plane. But to me, falling out of a plane is just much more dangerous. But what is a hobby or an interest that you've contemplated that you haven't got around to, whether it's with your husband or without your husband?
I don't really have any that I've been thinking about that I haven't gotten around to. I mean, one of the other kind of big interest of mine, my job and the research I do is all based on natural history, but I've also been a real history nerd, just general history nerd all my life, especially prehistoric history. We're learning so much right now. It's kind of a super exciting time for that field. Ancient DNA that's telling us, with an extraordinary degree of detail how all of the human populations across the world are interrelated, and looking at you can Scientists can excavate the body of an infant from 13,000 years ago in Montana and check its DNA and realize that that population was foundational to every modern indigenous population in the Americas. What we're known as the Clovis people, one of the first groups to come across the Bering Land Bridge at the end of the last ice age. The ability to kind of look into deep human history right now through ancient DNA and stable isotope analysis and proteomics and all of these amazing scientific breakthroughs that are giving us a window into the lives of people that lived thousands to hundreds of thousands of years ago. I just find that astonishing. If I had to pick a different career, if you told me I could not make a livelihood dealing with nature, I'd be an archaeologist. I'd be an archaeologist in a heartbeat. That would just be a very cool thing to be.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah? What's a hobby or an interest of yours that people would be surprised to know that is an interest of yours?
I think that's really cool, Scott. I've always been interested in like prehistoric areas and like traveling and seeing some of those landmarks. So I definitely want to eventually go to like the Andes Mountains. I want to go see the pyramids. I do want to be able to travel and see that kind of stuff. But as far as hobbies, I haven't tried yet. I want to learn how to fly a plane. So I've worked a lot of air shows doing brand ambassador stuff where I ran flight simulators with the Air Force trucks that went across the coast to coast through the air show events. And working those flight simulators made me want to try it. I haven't done it yet, but I really want to do a discovery flight and see how it goes. Other than that, I definitely want to try skydiving. That's something that's on the bucket list. I want to try the squirrel suits, where you like jump off the mountains and you have that squirrel suit thing on. I want to try that. Now, I don't know if I'm ever going to actually have the courage to do it, but in my head, I think that I would. Like, I would try it. I would try anything at least once and see how it goes. I've never snowboarded. I've never surfed. And I've never skied, and those are all things that I would like to try at some point. I was never really great at some of those kind of sports. I was always like the volleyball, basketball, swim kind of girl, but those were all things that I would like to try. As far as like hobby-wise goes, most of my hobbies are art related or plant related or writing. I write a lot. So I'm a very like hands-on kind of person, but I still want to be able to try a lot of those more adventurous style things at some point in my life.
Is there any novel in your book here? Because Scott has already written a book. I think Leanne has written a book, so maybe they've got some advice for you. So have you already written a book, Hannah? And if not, when is the book coming?
I have. So I have 3 published children's books right now for my dog. I have a 9-book series that's coming out in September. Pip, come. Thank you. And I have a novel that I haven't released yet, but I've rewritten it probably 4 times since I was young. So it was ready. I don't think I've hit the point where I am ready to release that sensitive information yet, which I'm hoping that at some point I will just like put it out there. It's very personal. It's more like biography style, and it has a lot of things from my childhood. It has a lot of things that could honestly help trauma and abuse victims, and especially teenagers who are going through hard things in life. I've been through a lot of things, so I wrote very raw from my perspective throughout most of my childhood and my adulthood. And I've put it all into this book. And so at some point I will release that into the wild. But for now, it just kind of sits on my laptop until I reach that point. This past year, I started with my children's books, finally releasing a lot of those because that was like my introduction into releasing my writing. They have a lot of like illustrations. They're smaller, they're simple, but they are also stories about my travels with my dog. The May Adventures is my like middle school aged books. Those are the ones that come out in September. All of Pepperoni's adventures are very much like baby storybook style. Those ones are released every month on the 26th. So we've already got 3 published. I have another one scheduled for publishing, and then I have another one scheduled for publishing next month. So those 5 will be out within the next couple of weeks. And then every month after that, we have another one coming. So I've always enjoyed writing. I just didn't know for a long time how to take it from my notebook into production. And last year, I finally figured it out. I worked an AI tour with Google, and it taught me a lot of like tips and tricks and tools that helped me bring it to life, and not just like on my iPad, but like actually get it into production. I learned about Amazon KDP. I didn't know that I could self-publish. So the whole time I'm thinking I have to find a publisher, I have to find somebody as an editor, but really you don't. So I do all my own editing. I've been self-published, and I enjoy it that way because it allows me to have control over my story, my book, and to not allow it to be changed by somebody who may not understand what it's about or who I am as a person. So that was one of the things that held me back as far as releasing my novel, was because I was afraid that I would hire the wrong person. I've met a lot of authors who did end up hiring the wrong editors, and they held on to their books for 6 to 9 months and did little to nothing with them, and they paid them thousands of dollars. I have met people who paid publishing companies, and then their book went nowhere. So finding out that I could self-publish, and that if I want to get it into larger markets, I can take it myself and get connected with people in those industries to get it to where I want it to be. I like being hands-on with it. I don't really like releasing that control to somebody who may not understand what I want out of it, you know?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And this is for maybe Scott and Leanne has some advice for you. But one of the singers that you had come to your event is actually a good friend of mine, and she actually was one of the community singers and everything like that. So not one of the featured singers, but she's one of the community singers. And I know she's been through some hard times. She's a grandma and a mother of 4 and a grandmother of, I forgot how many, it might be 10 or 12. I love count and everything. But I know that she's been through a lot, and she's always wanted to write a book, but sometimes she is her worst, not her worst critic, but sometimes she's the worst person in terms of actually pulling the trigger. So what advice would you give to somebody that has a book? We all have a book, and I know that definitely Nikki has a book as well. So what would you advise, and this is for all 3 of you, would you give to somebody that has a book in them that they need to release? Because I keep being her encourager and telling her to release that book, but maybe she needs to hear some others as well. So what advice would you give to folks that have a book? Maybe they've been through some troubled times. I know she went through some relationship troubles and some other life troubles as well. So what advice would you give to somebody that has a book that needs to be released?
Just do it.
Yep. Just write it, get it out. Yep.
I mean, unlike Hannah, I've always been published through, traditional trade publishers. So I've got, I went the agent and publishing house route. And it's hard. It's really, the publishing industry has changed in huge ways. It's become much, much more challenging. On the other hand, self-publishing has opened up an avenue for a lot of people. But I also know from folks that I know in, like, for example, in the Authors Guild, that there are a lot of pitfalls. And so you've really got to do your homework, because as Hannah said, you can invest thousands and thousands of dollars in getting a book published and edited and get it out there and not recoup any of that money. So it's a tough world trying to break through and be noticed by people who are actually going to buy your product is really, really challenging. And even for those of us who are kind of in the more traditional trade publishing world, there are fewer and fewer outlets that are reviewing books. It's harder. It's just because it's become very, very hard to break through. Mark, I'm going to have to apologize because unfortunately,
I'm going to wrap up for everybody shortly and everything like that. Yeah. You've been a great guest, as has everybody. So we're going to wrap up very shortly. There was a couple of very quick questions, and then there's one that I asked all my guests. So I'll get to that with you first, and then, like I said, everybody will be wrapping up shortly because I know everybody's got times, and I need to get out of this building myself at all along those lines. But I do have to ask just really quick, and then to Scott, I'm going to get you next. But this is a quick question for Hannah, and very quick answer, please, Hannah, and everything like that. But I know that you mentioned being from Kentucky. I did say that I had a good friend that went to the Kentucky Derby. When you were here, you told me that it's not the Kentucky Derby you want to go to. It's actually the Oaks that you want to go to. So what is that about? Because you told me that you can go, because I told you that was on my bucket list, because I was a fan of Hunter S. Thompson and Fear and Loathing, and one of the Fear and Loathing books was set in Kentucky and everything like that. So I always wanted to go to the Derby. And you were like, don't go to the Derby, go to the Oaks. The Oaks is more fun. So tell me about the Oaks and why that's more fun.
So I've been to the Derby quite a few times. I mean, you grow up in Kentucky. I was less than 2 hours away from it. It's just kind of something we do. But the Oaks is like the pre-party. It's like the kickoff to the Derby week. It's the day where sometimes they do a pink out and everybody's wearing pink and everybody has their big hats on. But it is just a complete party from even if you do like general admission and you're in the mid-ground, everywhere. There's so much going on each level, on every aspect of it, but everybody's coming out not just to watch races, but to kick off the season. And I would say Oaks was 1,000 times more fun for me than Derby was ever. I've been to the Derby several times, but unless you're like going to these box locations or you're on Millionaires Row or you're like in these, they have like bar areas with different parties on top of buildings all throughout. So you don't really know what else going on throughout the Derby. You just have to figure out what section you're in and where you're at. Pip, come. Sorry. But Oaks is fun no matter where you're at. I like to be in that middle like ground area in between because that's where all the food is. That's where all the fun is. I didn't really care for Millionaires Row because I just felt like we were all just sitting there. And unless you come with like a large crowd, it's just kind of awkward. I'm sure it's great for people who go every single year and they know each other. But as far as like, if you're really going to go, general admission is fine. Like you're going to be in the middle area, but that's where the party is. That's where people go dancing. That's where people just live it up. And it's not so much about just the race. You have big screens all around you, so you can watch the race whenever you want to. And if you want to go up into the stands and like actually watch it, you can do that as well. But from my perspective, from what I've experienced, Kentucky Oaks is the funnest part.
Yeah, I appreciate that and everything. Just got to know you got to get ready to bounce. And like I said, I'll wrap up for everybody very shortly and everything like that. But we did touch a little bit about
Mark. I'm getting text. I'm supposed to be on another call right now. I really have to go.
No, I'm
sorry.
I was going to ask you the question that I asked everybody, which is, could you give a message of positivity and how people can reach you? And then I'm letting you go.
Okay. My website is Scott Weidensaul, SCOTTWE, Scott Weidensaul, all one word, .com. There's a contact me link on there. They can get in touch with me with that. Listen, I'm sorry. I hate to have to run, but I'm holding up somebody else who's supposed to be doing another interview.
Well, I appreciate it. And can you give a message of positivity? It can be a quick message because this is a global network.
Get outside and see birds.
Appreciate you.
That's the best one. So, all right. Good talking to you. Take care.
Good talking to you as well. I know he's got to bounce and everything like that, but definitely I appreciate him being on and giving that great advice, including what to do with our birds and the conservation and all along. Yeah, he was a great guest, and I know he's got to bounce. So I'm going to pull him off if I can, since he's probably having a problem getting off there and everything like that. But yeah, this has been a great show and everything, and that's what I ask everybody. By the way, Hannah, I was going to tell you that if you get a chance, look up bambooturtle.com. That is my dad's website, but he actually has, like you were talking about your Pippin children's book, he actually writes a series of stories with bamboo. So bamboo is kind of like his turtle figurine. My dad is very much into turtles, just like Scott's into birds. So if they go on a beach trip, he and my brother, or he and my brother and nephews, I think they just recently, my dad and my nephews, bamboo will sometimes write entire dialogue. So he has not turned it into a children's book yet, but it does have a series of entries on his web page and everything like that. So if you get a chance to read it, because Bamboo is a true character and everything like that, because he'll actually talk about what adventures he and Dad have done if they're going to the beach or if they're going to an art show, because Dad is an artist as well. So Bamboo is prominently featured, even though it's not a real turtle, even though Bamboo might get upset that I call him not real, because he'd be like, I'm as real as you are and everything like that. So he'd probably get upset at me for calling him not real and everything like that. So I need to be very cautious of that. Otherwise, Bamboo might cuss me out on one of those shows and everything like that. It'd be like, Mark, I'm just as real as you are. I might be made of wood, but I'm just as real. Kind of like the whole Pinocchio syndrome and everything like that. So
he's a real boy.
yes,
This is mine. This is Pepperoni. So Pepperoni's adventures are all based off real things, real places in his life. I mean, of course, there are moments where it is children's book style. So, like, obviously, Pip's not gonna actually speak, but there are real moments though with his friends. Like the last one that was published was Pip and the Boys, and it's about two of his best friends back home. We have Pip and Luna's Big Sand Adventure, where I took him and his sister to Utah, and we went to this event called Trail Hero. It's like an off-roading event out in the desert. So they got to run on the beach, they got to play in sand, and it's just all about like their experience. His first one is Pip Picks a Pumpkin, and it was when I like brought him home. Within the first couple of weeks, I took him to Menards, and we went and picked out a pumpkin in the Menards Garden Center. So that's his whole first book, and it's super cute. He's sold over 50 books already from his first and second ones. We also do a book giveaway. Every time a book is released, we do a giveaway on his Instagram. And we've had 3 books from each giveaway gone. We haven't done the 3rd book giveaway yet because we're still trying to reach our mile marker for that to happen. But he has a book in India. He has books in the United Kingdom. His books have made it to, I think, 7 different states at this point. So I just think it's fun. Once you like get into that character world and you start building that identity, like your turtle guy, they kind of go everywhere. Kids fall in love with them. They start to recognize them. They start to want to see more of their adventure. So whether it's a real animal or not a real animal, that's not even the most important aspect of it. It's the connection that they build within the readers. Right. And when readers like get that point, they're like, oh, this is like Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse became huge not because it was a real mouse, but because he had that brand, that identity, that's something that a child could recognize, even from just a small black logo with ears. Yep, so Pip has a blue paw print. We do potographs in his books where he uses like an ink pad and I do a little paw print in it, and then we write a message to each person that orders it. We do signed ones. And a lot of times they're just like a little message of encouragement, positivity, love, you know, whatever it is, whoever's ordering it, whether it's a child or a family member or a friend. I like to leave those personal messages because that's something that's going to be like an heirloom after. They're going to keep it, they're going to pass it down. And they're not like super complicated books, but they are very cute. They're very consistent, and they have his logo on the back of them. They have his little stamped autograph with his paw print. And we've been building a Shopify store for him. It's Pepperoni's Adventures, but we're making patches, and they're almost like adventure patches. So some of them are like hiking, some of them are camping, some of them are beach days. So eventually you'll be able to get a Paw Scout badge where your badges, you can order them or whatever, but they can be added onto like their harnesses. They can be added onto their like little clothing stuff. But part of his identity is just bringing adventure, outdoors, education, love to everybody. And some of his stories are about helping other dogs find homes. So Pip and Luna's was about her finding her forever home. It ends with her joining her family in Kentucky. So I like took his sister on the road with me, but she wasn't going to be mine to keep. It was to bring her to her new home. So she got this whole adventure with him, and then she got to find her home. Another one that's coming out is Stella the Steady, and that is about a rescue dog that we rescued a few months ago in Texas. I found her like running on a highway, starving, just absolutely in such horrible shape. I took her in. We kind of like gave her a lot of love and healing and got her regulated, found her forever home. And so her book is all about how to cope, how to handle traumatized dogs, like how to help them heal and recover and be more sensitive to their needs, because they're not going to react like a dog who has been spoiled their entire life like this one. They're going to be more in that like flighty starvation mode. You know, they're going to have bad habits that you have to reset through love and kindness and just structure. So some of his books have big meaning, and a lot of times we try to integrate that into what we're building. So eventually his adventures can help those other dogs. Like we might be able to help humane societies at some point, and we want to be able to help other dogs that are starving out there in the world be able to have homes and, you know, consistent meals and families. So that's part of what we build with them. It's not just about him and his adventures. It's more about him doing good things and teaching children that they can do it as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, Leanne, is there an animal of inspiration for you as well? We've been talking about birds and definitely this dog, and I did mention my dad's turtle, and I actually had a book written that a friend of mine wrote after I told him that I have a love and an admiration of otters. Yeah, the lovely sea creatures that love to wash their hands before they have their fish dinner and everything like that. So a friend of mine wrote a book that was based on my love of otters. I think it's actually there on Amazon. If you look under Amazon and everything, I think that's where Nicole Maxwell has that book that she wrote for me based on my love of otters. I think she might have done 2 books and everything like that. And then here in Durham, we've got the Poetry Fox, who is a gentleman dressed up in a fox outfit that will write a poem for you as a fox and all along those lines. So I just wondered, is there any animals that inspire you in the storytelling world, or even in your work with youth that are going through a lot of the things that you're dealing with in terms of their handicaps? And I even hate using that term because I think we're just differently able and all along those lines. But how do animals play a role in the work that you do?
Yeah, differently able, definitely. Guide dogs are huge, especially working blind, visually impaired. They've helped a lot. But cats too, actually, for me personally, because I'm a cat mommy. I mean, there's, you know, the first cat I ever got from my parents, right there, that picture up there in the back painting. My cats are my emotional support animals, and they have been there for me through a lot. I just had one pass 2 months ago. Yeah. So yeah, they've been there through me through thick and thin, and through a lot of my families and the people I've worked with as well. I had a client this morning who had a cat. It was, again, one-eyed cat, and that was living with them, and really got him through a lot of stuff too. So whatever the animal is that they're attached to, you know, it does tend to help them a bit with our psyche and just getting along. So
hey, Leanne, you mentioned that, and it's interesting you mentioned that because I went yesterday, might go again today, but I think it was yesterday that I went to a restaurant to grab a bite to eat. Sometimes I eat way too much the DoorDash and stuff like that I mentioned earlier, but I stopped at a restaurant, and there was a young lady there with her dad and one of her uncles, because I think it was a family of 4 that she's got, like one, her father and 3 aunts and uncles, because I think it was just one aunt and 2 uncles and everything. But she had a service dog, and as she was walking, you know, I didn't see any what people would consider regular signs of being differently abled and everything. So being the journalist that I am and naturally curious, I asked her what the service dog was there for, because it was like a golden retriever type dog and everything like that. So very furry dog. And what she told me actually caught me off guard, because she had just graduated. I think she's going up to New York to work in the hospital field, and she just graduated from Duke University. But she told me that she had a heart murmur, and apparently this dog is able to recognize when she is about to have one of those attacks and all along those lines. So it will give her a bark or some other symbol to help her go sit down and calm down. So that was what this dog was for. It was not necessarily to regulate her like vision or some of the things that we usually associate service dogs with, but it was actually to monitor how she was handling her heart rate and stuff like that, because she has some sort of heart murmur. So the dog is fine-tuned enough to her to know that if she's in trouble, the dog will bark, and then she knows to go sit down and to calm down whatever's going on and everything like that. But when she told me the story, I was very fascinated, because I'm going like, that's not what I was expecting to be the answer. Because like I said, I didn't see any obvious signs, because a lot of times even here, if I'm doing, because I get around by mass transit, even if I'm going mass transit, I'll see people that are obviously blind or obviously have handicaps that or differently able that we are easily recognizable. But when I was talking to this young lady, she's probably 22 or something like that because she just graduated college. That was not the answer I was expecting. I was not expecting her to be talking about a heart murmur and everything like that. So I just thought you'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about that because, like I said, that was not what I was expecting when I ran into this young lady. Like I said, I'll probably never see her again because I don't know that I've got any plans to go to New York anytime soon and everything like that. But it was interesting hearing her and also hearing the tales from her uncle and her father because they had different personalities, as oftentimes siblings will.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. My dog is a service dog, and I'm a physically pretty able-bodied person. So most people would look at me and not think of me having a service animal. But I grew up with narcolepsy, and I grew up like having passed out episodes. I have not had an episode since I was 16. However, I am a truck driver. I go across the United States. So I have Pepperoni as just like an extra level of precaution, even though I have not had an episode in such a long time. He can alert me when I'm tired. He can alert me when I am distracted. So like if he feels anxious in the car, like if I am driving and I can physically tell that I am tired, he will basically tell me to stop. Like it is time to get a hotel, pull over, you're done for the day. And where without him, I would push myself. I would just keep going and keep going. But that is oftentimes how a lot of people get into accidents and how they die. So I feel safer with Pip in the car with me because he is that little extra sense of security to be like, hey, I think we've been in this long enough. He helps me take more breaks so I don't drive for such long distances at the same time. Me and him have, I think, the same bathroom schedule because every time he's got to go, I got to go. And we'll stop more often now, but it helps me stay more alert, helps me stay more active. And just overall, I am more aware and focused. As I mentioned before, I am an ADHD kid. I'm 30 now, so I'm not a kid anymore. But for most of my life, I was unmedicated and just very visually distracted. You have a pretty landscape, you have a pretty sunset. My focus would go there. But with Pip in the car, my awareness as like a woman naturally goes to protecting and nurturing the child, my dog. And so just having him next to me makes me so much more hyper vigilant and aware to keep my eyes on the road, to stay undistracted from all these other things. So he may not be over here giving me CPR, but he could absolutely not only alert me when I need him, but he could find help if I needed help. And then if I am emotionally like upset, he knows immediately and he is on me, like trying to regulate my nervous system. He is like trying to help me calm down and making sure that I don't drive if I am emotionally distressed for whatever reason it is. I can tell by his reaction if I need to stop, But he travels on the road with me for those like minor reasons. I just feel better having him there with me. So you never know why somebody has a service animal. We have another tour manager. His is a diabetic alert dog. So when he eats, he has this small little beagle who can let him know if his blood sugar is low or high, or if he needs to go get food, or if he needs to sit down. Daisy is his medical alert dog for diabetes. And that's not something like you see in people. You don't know if they have ADHD or if they're narcoleptic or if they have diabetes. Those are things that you don't visually see in a person, but can still affect their quality of life, or it also affect if they need something additional. And I don't want to be a person who is like heavily medicated just to function when I know that I have developed coping mechanisms to be able to deal with a lot of the things in my life. And I never thought that I would be a dog mom, but having Pip in my life has changed it in so many ways for the better. I don't know. I think everybody has their own service dog for different reasons. Some of them are for the blind. My husband's grandmother, she is deaf and blind. So she has always had a service animal, which is a big reason I kind of looked into it. She needs one to help her see. She needs one to help her walk. She needs one that helps her around the house. Her dog is a golden retriever, I believe. Amazing dog. Absolutely amazing. This dog is so highly trained. It helps her cross sidewalks. As a woman who is deaf and blind, she's very limited in life, you know. She cannot drive. The whole reason she's deaf is because she got hit by a bus in a crosswalk.
Wow.
She was blind from birth, and then she got hit and became deaf. But her service dog is incredibly important to her just living everyday basic life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. Hey, Leanne, just really quickly, like I say, we are getting ready to wind down the show then all along those lines. But what is something that folks do not give enough credit to when it comes to they'll being differently able? Because I've had some guests, including some that were writers, and I, like I said, I do know that sometimes we get stuck on that word handicapped and all along those lines. But I do like differently abled better and everything like that. And I think personally that this is just my view, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and also Hannah's. But I personally am of the opinion that there are very few sane people, and that there are very few people that don't have a something going on in their body. Then we are all differently able in one way or the other. It might be mental, it might be physical, it might be whatever. But I think that we all have some sort of something going on in our bodies and in our lives, and all in that space. And I would think that that's probably the entire population to some degree or another. Just like I'm not sure that if somebody tells me they're sane, I'm not sure that I believe them, because I think that we all have a degree of insanity in our life and everything like that. So I would be very worried if somebody told me that they are sane, because that tells me that they might have their own problems and everything like that. But I just wanted y'all take on that, because I'm of the opinion that those that are claiming to be sane are probably the least sane of us. I remember when I was in college, I wrote a short story. It was actually one of, ironically, I think it was from one of my journalism classes, because they were creative writing, but it was basically this notion of a person in an insane asylum talking about, as we were talking earlier with Scott, about all the things that were going on in the world. So this was in the 80s that I wrote this. So there was pollution, there was Watergate, there was all this other stuff. And at the end of the story, because he was pointing out, the person that was supposedly insane was pointing out all the insane things that were going on in the world at that time. We're not even talking about the current times and everything like that. And then at the end of the story, he was basically like, well, if they're the sane ones, then what's the matter with the world and everything like that? Because they were basically pointed out that the world itself is insane and everything like that. So a lot of people that claim to be sane are not all that sane.
That's true. And a good point too is that people have a lot of struggles and a lot of things going on that you don't see.
Right.
And when I was talking to y'all earlier about becoming disabled, because I had teachers say, well, you don't, quote, look like you are, whatever that means. But so yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot more going on in these human bodies than people are aware of. And to circle back for a second in the special needs populations, because I've pretty much worked the whole gamut. It's shocking to me how people just really don't realize that, this is a human and they are capable. They just may not be capable in the manner you think, quote, they should be, or that you feel that they should go about. But being differently abled is exactly that. They are differently abled and they bring a lot to the table, and they're so underestimated. It's amazing to me. Even, my blind and visually impaired populations, it trips me out sometimes how, again, people just underestimate them. I mean, I've seen blind sculptors sell the most beautiful things ever I've seen in my life, as an example, or whatever it might be. So yeah, you never really know. So again, the old adage, never judge a book by its cover. Yeah. There's a reason for it. So
that makes a lot of sense, because even the greatest minds of all time would probably be falling under the differently abled and everything like that. I am a friend of Stephen Hawkins, and I know that Stephen Hawkins had all kinds of things going on in his life. I'm also a fan of Albert Einstein and of Sherlock Holmes and of a number of other folks. Well, actually, A. Conan Doyle that wrote the Sherlock Holmes books and everything like that. But even if you look at some of the great folks in the jazz world, Charles Mingus was put in a mental institution at one point or another as well. So that's what I meant when I said that a lot of folks that are have these gifts and everything like that, they went through a lot during the times of having these gifts and everything like that. So, and a lot of times we don't know what they've been through, and sometimes they might have even been misdiagnosed. But I do know that some of these
Exactly.
folks who have gone through different battles. I think Mingus, it might have been drug related as well. I mean, two of the greatest musicians in modern times, and I'm a fan of both of them, were Prince and Michael Jackson, and I know, and even Miles Davis, and I know that all three of them had their own issues as well. And even Buddy Guy probably has his issues as a big blues fan that I'm a big fan of as well, and everything like that. So that's what I meant when I said that a lot of our creative folks and a lot of our folks that have got this great wisdom, including some of the great scientists that have won Nobel Prizes and all along those lines, they would definitely be put in that differently abled category.
Yep.
Absolutely. There's a fine line between insanity and genius. And I think most of the time when people classify people as insane, it's just because they don't understand them or how their brain works. But I think a lot of the times, like, if somebody is told every day that you're smart, that you are a genius, or that you're intelligent, they're going to believe that and they're going to follow more into that. But if you take that same child and tell them that there's something wrong with them, or that they're insane or they're crazy, they're going to start to believe that and go on the other side of that spectrum. They can be the same child, they can have the same level of intelligence, a super high IQ, but depending on what you feed them, depends on their own belief. And you can have a very negative effect or a very positive effect using just your words. So I think a lot of people who look at Albert Einstein as a genius, he was somebody that people, you know, backed and believed in, but not for most of his life. For a lot of his life, they talked to him like he was crazy or he was insane. And now he is one of the most highly respected scientists in history because they realized, like, he wasn't insane. He just had a different level of understanding that a lot of people didn't have. So I think we find that a lot in this world. Now, is mental illness absolutely rampant today? Yes. That has a lot to do with our nutrition. It has a lot to do with America's food supplies, with heavy metals, with parasites, with all kinds of things that we experience in our daily life just based off our food and what we consume as individuals. Now, I feel like when you look at cultures that have a lot cleaner eating and living lifestyles, they don't have the levels of autism, ADHD, mental illness, suicide, depression that we do because they're feeding their brain and their body what it needs. On the other side of that, when you have people who are constantly in a like overload system, whether it's stress, whether it's food related, whether it's hormonal, you have people who are mentally not operating at the level that they should be just because of their environment. So I think as America, like, we should focus on our environment a lot more. We should focus on what we are consuming a lot heavier, and just trying to cultivate a society that teaches kids that they can be whatever they want, but also how to become the best version of themselves, the healthiest version of themselves, so that way they can operate like Albert Einstein, so that way their brain is functioning on a level that creates technological advances or artistic advances. I'm an art child, I'm an autistic ADHD child. That has a lot to do with growing up in a very diabetic family. I was constantly exposed to sugar as a child. It was never regulated. My food intake was never regulated. And I saw that growing up. So at 11 years old, I took a look around and I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. And I stopped drinking sodas that day. And I never picked up a Coca-Cola in my life again after that at 11. Most kids, that's so normal for them to consume that they don't understand how bad it is for them. And I think if I didn't dive into like culinary arts and nutrition at such a young age, I would also be in that category of living incredibly unhealthy still today. Now, I think that a lot of kids, they have the world kind of stacked against them in that aspect because they don't know what's good and what's not, because their parents are the ones that are supposed to teach that. Their schools are supposed to teach that. Our schools do not provide nutritious meals. A lot of times it's just as bad as prison food. And you also have a lot of people who are in and out of institutions because of a lack of nutrition. When you look at studies where they changed the nutritional value of food in prisons, violence and crime rates went down 97% just in the institution alone. Imagine if we did that within schools. Imagine if our children were being fed and taken care of in a healthy, stable manner. Their own ability to regulate their nervous system and their hormones, it would be astronomically different than what it is today.
No, I definitely agree with you on that, and I'm guilty of that as well because my brother even to this day teases me because I am probably overly addicted to iced tea. It is a Southern tradition, and I definitely will go and get me an iced tea or an Arnold Palmer, which is the tea mixed in with lemonade and everything like that. So I know that I've got some bad habits that I've had for decades and all along those lines, but they've been just part of that Southern living and everything like that. So at least I'm aware of it being a bad habit and all along those lines. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I'm glad I got you, Hannah and Leanne and Scott earlier and everything like that. It's always fun, and y'all are all welcome to come back. And I know you're traveling, Hannah and Leanne. You've been on a couple of times and everything. And Scott, that was his first time. But everybody's welcome back. This is what the online dinner party is. I invite folks. I'm hoping to get your boss on because I would love to have Kwanzaa and Jose on at some point. And I did tell them that when I saw them here and everything like that. And I did send them some texts about the Apollo show that we've done here and everything like that. So hopefully they'll respond. But I know y'all are busy with the road trip, but do remind them when you see them to get back in touch with me and all along those lines. But I'm gonna actually borrow this one because I've sometimes borrowed a couple of them from Leanne's questions and everything. But I do love this one, so I'm gonna borrow it from her and everything like that. And I've been binging. I am a guilty person of binging on TV shows and all along those lines because I am a fan of some of the TV shows. So I might go and watch an episode or several episodes of Bones or Criminal Mind or Cold Case. Yes, I've even gone back to Cold Case and even what's the one with the two girls that are set in the diner that are trying to start the bakery and all along those lines. But definitely I've binged on that one as well and everything along those lines. So there are a couple of shows that I will definitely binge on. I just discovered it, and I was talking to Val about this, a black soap opera that's out there now. I think it's on CBS and all along those lines. So I just discovered that one, and I saw an episode and might try to watch some more episodes of it and everything along those lines. But what is some shows that y'all have been binging on, whether they're old shows? Because I'll even watch, like I said, Cold Gates. Beyond the Gates is the black daytime soap opera, and apparently it's the first one in over 30 years, and it's out there. So I did stumble across that recently because it just came on starting back in February of last year and everything like that. So what are some shows that y'all have been binging on or watching?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I go from different generations, like different eras, excuse me, is what I meant. So I have some friends in the industry, and one of the shows that I binge a lot is Smallville. I'm friends with some of the cast, and I've been on their podcast. So it's pretty cool. And I just like the show. A young Clark Kent and Lex Luthor, how they were friends at first and then they're not. But I'm into a lot of that stuff. Like I was actually just watching the new Daredevil that's out. As someone that works with the blind and visually impaired, I'm like people's worst nightmare when I watch it with them. Because I'm like, that's accurate. That's not accurate. That's, but it's still fun. I like stuff like that. I like comedies. I like old school stuff, new school stuff. I mean, stuff from the 70s and up, but even 50s actually. If I get a migraine, I'll watch stuff in black and white, like the old Dick Van Dyke Show. I mean, that's really long back, right? Just because it's easier for me to see stuff in black and white with a full blown migraine, or even like Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I mean, that's really going back. So it depends. I mean, I've watched The Fresh Prince. So it depends. I'm like all over the place.
No, I'm all over the place too. Like I said, I might watch Cold Case. The show that I was trying to remember is Two Broke Girls. That was the title that I was trying to remember because I stumbled across that, and I know it's an old show, but it is quite hilarious because one of them is a sharp-tongued street Brooklyn native, and then there's the wealthy socialite who found herself broke and everything like that, and they're working in a bar and everything like that. Yeah. And they've got the Russian friend. I think she's either Russian or Ukrainian and everything like that, and her boyfriend is from the same Eastern European area that I think she eventually married and everything like that. But yeah, that show is quite hilarious, and I got caught up in that for a minute and following that storyline. But like you said, I might watch Sanford and Son, might watch even older shows like that, like the Jeffersons. I've even been going back and watching because we interviewed them one time. There was a period that I was watching Little House on the Prairie and some of the cowboy westerns like Bonanza and even Matlock and Texas Walker Ranger. I think they just lost one of their stars recently and everything like that. So definitely I will watch some of those shows, and I've even become a fan lately of Marshall, which is a new kind of show and everything like that, and Watson and a couple of other shows, including Elspeth and everything. So there are even some new shows, and I was following Equalizer with Queen Latifah, the new version of Equalizer, and the new version of Hawaii Five-0 with a male character a female character that had been played by the male in the original version and everything like that. So it's interesting seeing some of the replays and everything and how they are done in terms of the character switches and all in that space. I don't know if any of y'all have watched it, but Stranger Things is actually based here in North Carolina, because that is actually two guys from Jordan High School that created that show, and it just
I love it.
off. But that is definitely a show that has got roots, and I understand that they slipped some references to Durham and like the Bulls, the baseball team, and the other things. They call it a different name, but they slip references. And friends of mine tell me they watch it regularly, that they can pick up like the old malls and other things that are featured in there, but they have to study it to realize what is being said. But yeah, there's some sneaking some references, just like they do on One Tree Hill, and some of the people that have lived in those cities have told me that they sneak in references to living in actual places and everything like that.
Yeah.
So Hannah, is there any particular shows that you're a big fan of, or maybe your crew is a big fan of? Y'all are all sitting there watching it on the bus while y'all are traveling?
So we both drive, so we don't really get to watch anything on the road. And I don't watch a whole lot of TV in general, but in the wintertime, I do like to binge watch some good shows. I like Supernatural. That's one of my favorites since I was young. I've watched all 15 seasons, every episode, probably 3 or 4 times at this point. So that's one of my favorites. I like the 100, the OA. I've watched The Walking Dead. So typically in the wintertime is like my binge a TV show time. That's also when I write a lot of my books, is whenever I can sit down, stay home. We live in Iowa, so I don't like to go out in the snow that much. And we don't work on the road in the wintertime. So those 3 or 4 months that we get off work, that's my time to like catch up on all the show stuff, to catch up on all my artsy projects. On the road, sometimes we'll pick something and turn on the TV, but for the most part, I'm like reading, I'm writing, catching up on work stuff. Last night, I think I binge watched Law and Order SVU, couple episodes. Yeah, I grew up on that, so I was like, oh, that's a fan favorite. I can go back to that, and it has clearly come so far since the last time I watched it, because it's been years. But it's always a good one. I used to love NCIS and Bones and all of those like scientific shows. I love sci-fi stuff. I like good movies. Since I don't get to watch a whole lot of TV, sometimes all I have time for is like one movie. And I tend to go for more of like the interstellar, gravity, spacey type of shows there.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you might have been watching Avatar, all of its various versions, as well as Black Panther, because that would definitely fit in to some degree those space travel kind of categories. And I understand it, like you said, Smallville and some of those other ones that are very Superman oriented and everything like that. Is there an artist that you would love to see? Because I was reading recently that a lot of the artists are canceling back on their tours because a lot of us don't have the discretionary funds that we wish we had. And I know that even one of my coworkers went to see the Michael Jackson film, and I'm hoping to go see that at some point or another. But is there a artist that you wish that you had seen if they were still around that you didn't see? Because I had the pleasure of seeing Prince once, but there were other ones that I never got to see in terms of performances that I wish I had seen. And all along those lines, I even saw James Brown when he was living and that was when I was in college and everything like that. But there are other ones, like I don't think I ever saw Jimmy. Matter of fact, I know I never saw Jimi Hendrix, and I never saw some of the other greats, and I haven't really gotten around to seeing Bob Dylan yet, even though he's still around. But is there any performers that you wish to see that you haven't seen? As a matter of fact, I still got to get around to seeing Beyonce and Shakira and everything like that. But is there any artists that you need, and even Bad Bunny, are there any artists that you need to see that you would love to see that you haven't seen, or that maybe you've already seen?
Shakira sounds like a great one. Would definitely love to see her. Older style, I would have loved to see the Beatles, like in their prime. I'm a big Beatles fan. And then as far as like the Michael Jackson movie premiere goes, our bus, the Apollo bus, there's a Michael Jackson bus as well. So both made out of lime. We left our hub at the same time, like the same week, and the Michael Jackson bus went up for that movie premiere. It was not quite as long of a tour as ours, but it was such a cool bus. I mean, it looked like a party on wheels. So I can only assume that if I would have got to see Michael Jackson when he was alive, that would have been an amazing show. I would have loved to see that. Prince, obviously, anybody alive that could have went to see Prince should have went to see Prince. I would have. I did meet his protege when I was probably about 20 years old. She was an amazing young woman. She stayed at the hotel I worked at when I was living in Ohio, and she like brought her guitar. She was doing a tribute for him like right after his passing, and they just happened to come and stay at our hotel. So I was like, man, I was so close to like his team, and I wish I would have taken the time when I was younger to go and actually watch one of his shows. I have been to a lot of old rock shows, so I've seen like Def Leppard and Metallica, Tesla, Poison. I'm glad that I got to see them before the ending of a lot of their tours, because some of them may be done, some of them may be ending in the next 5 years. A lot of those older bands are not going to be around later on, so I'm glad that we took time to go watch them while we could.
Yep.
Other than that, I think as far as the newer artists, I'm not like a person who just jumps on a bandwagon just to go see, but if I do get the opportunity to watch live music, I'm always down for any kind of live music. I have a very broad interest in music genres.
Same here and everything like that. You mentioned that, and I actually was part of a documentary film festival, and one of the films that they showed was about the gentleman that wrote one of the gay anthems and all along those lines. I can't think of the gentleman's name, but the song that he was famous for writing was rewritten and redone by Lady Gaga, and she was actually featured in the documentary, and it was actually funny. You'll get a kick out of this at one, and you also, Leanne, is one that's got friends in the industry, because apparently the filmmaker was being asked, how did they get Lady Gaga? And they asked, I think it was Questlove, and Questlove was like, whoa, you just, what you want, Stephanie? Because apparently that's Lady Gaga's real name, and he just pulled it out of his Rolodex because he's actually got her name in his Rolodex and everything like that. And then I think it was like a day or two later that she called and was part of the interview. And like your friends, Kwanzaa and everything, it sounds like she's more down to earth than people give her credit for. So I would probably go see a Lady Gaga concert after hearing more about her as a person. Now, there's a couple of the other stars that I've met, and I won't name names because I do go regularly to the National Black Theater Festival, that did not impress me because they were not as friendly as they should be, because sometimes people can be a little bit too egotistical. And I'll just leave it as that and everything like that. So there can be some that are not as friendly as some of those that y'all already mentioned that y'all have met and dealt with and everything like that. And some of them may have changed, because one of them that I can think of was 10, 15 years ago. So maybe they've calmed down and come down to earth as opposed to what they were at the time that they were being a superstar and everything like that, because you can change just like anybody can and all on those lines. One of the great incidents that happened here, and you'll get a kick out of this, both you, Hannah and Leanne, that happened here at the center was, and speaking of folks that have passed, Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis actually performed here. Well, actually, Ruby Dee performed. She did her My One Good Nerve. Dick Gregory has actually performed in this building as well, and there have been some other famous folks as well. But I do remember Dick Gregory actually performed in this lobby because we did not have the theater. I think we were doing some renovations, so he was actually doing his speech here. But Ruby was doing the play in the theater, which I know Kwanzaa came and looked at and everything like that. But they was doing their anniversary. So Ossie actually came down here and surprised her doing their anniversary, because she was doing the play during their anniversary. So she was not expecting him to walk in the door. So we had to keep it real hush hush, just like we had to keep one of the famous Blues Brothers hush hush when we were doing the Blues Festival, because we had a very popular Bull Durham Blues Festival, and I can't remember if it was Dan Aykroyd or Jim Belushi, but one of them was doing the rice diet, which is a famous diet here in North Carolina and everything like that. So they were in the stands, and we were like, wait, can't tell folks that they're here? Okay, we'll be quiet and everything like that. So we've had a couple of famous folks. I even remember Danny Glover coming to visit and hear Bobby Blue Bland, because he is a big blues fan and all along those lines. So definitely lots going on in that space, and we've had some amazing opportunities, including some rockers like Megavan. Leanne, and then I'm getting everybody here, I promise, and I said that a minute ago and everything like that. But what are some musicians that you would like to hear that maybe you haven't heard and all along those lines? And I'm gonna give you that same question that I mentioned to Scott to get us all out of here. And then I'm gonna play this video that I usually play at the end of every show and everything like that. But who are some musicians that you would have liked to have heard that you maybe did not hear?
I've never seen Janet Jackson live. I love Janet. I have for years, ever since Good Times she was on as a kid, right? When she was a little actress there and like went on to fame and Different Strokes and stuff. I've always loved her. Acting, singing, everything. So I'd love to see her live. And again, Lady Gaga, like you said, but that's about it. Really.
Yeah, I would love to see Janet live too, and I wouldn't mind seeing the Queen Beyonce live as well, and all along those lines. So she would be great to see. But yeah, there's some artists like her, but definitely I would love to see Janet. Actually, Tito we had before he passed away because he was running the BB King Blues Band. So before he passed, so we've had two of the Jacksons here in the building. That's when I learned that there are groupies, just like the groupies that go on the Apollo tour and everything. There are groupies that go to these different things and everything like that. Because there was a young lady, Gadget Trish, I think is her name. She drove all the way down from New York to see Rebbie Jackson because she was that much and still is that much of a Jackson fan that she would go anywhere to see any Jackson anywhere. So this was probably 15, 20 years ago that she drove all the way down from New York City because I think she was living and probably still is living in Manhattan to come to the center to hear Rebbie Jackson. So we've had two of the Jacksons, Rebbie and Tito, that was playing as the front man for the BB King band before he passed away. Rebbie's still around, but Tito has passed on and everything like that. But yeah, it was great to see them. Never saw Michael and everything like that. So as you heard, the one question I get everybody to answer in this show and everything along those lines, and I kind of implied it earlier and everything, is a message of positivity, because this network, Pod TV, is a global network that Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun founded, and all along those lines. So if you got any message of positivity that you would like to share with our global audience, and also how you can be contacted and all along those lines, and anything that you want to share that you haven't got to share during this almost 2-hour interview and everything like that. So if you want to bring that, and then we'll wrap everything up. So I'll start with you, Leanne. So tell me how you can be reached and also your message of positivity.
All right. So it's a very simple message of positivity. 3 words. You are enough.
Mm-hmm.
I can be reached at themissleanne@yahoo.com for that. Anything I want to add? Sorry, I was late.
No
life of a teacher, there's always something going on. But I don't know if I want to add too much other than I am an advocate if people have questions, if they have concerns, things coming up. Someone tried to take an Uber. For an example, someone tried to take an Uber and they wouldn't let their guide dog on with them. Just to give you an example, I can talk to you about that. I can talk to you about any issues in the school system. I have been teaching since I was 13, and I'm obviously no longer 13. So I've been doing it a while, is my point. So yeah, any questions, anything I can advocate, help you with, I'll do it.
I appreciate that.
I'm probably gonna have to go pretty soon. So
yep, I appreciate that. What about you, Hannah? Any messages of positivity that you want to share, and how you can be reached, and anything that you didn't get to that you would like to get to, and everything like that?
Sure. So my name is Hannah Fields, and online, most of my pages are Hanny May. You can reach me at hannymayfields@gmail.com, or my Fairyland Fields page, or Pepperoni's Adventures, because I have my business and my dog's brand as well. On every platform, so you can find me on any of them. And as far as a message of positivity, do not let that still small voice in your head hold you back from living your best life, from experiencing new things, and just from going out there and trying it. Nothing is going to stop you but yourself. So quit holding yourself back and just do it. That would be my positive message. We are capable of a lot more than we think we are, and we are a lot stronger than we think we are. So I think just putting yourself out there is such a courageous thing to do.
I appreciate both of you, and I appreciate Scott being on as well. I'm going to go out with this commercial about comes from Oklahoma. It is about people that are honoring both the teachers but also the support staff. And my mother was a guidance counselor when I was an infant, and I have a grandmother that was a cafeteria worker, and I've got friends that are all kinds of support staff, whether that is resource officers or whether that is folks that are doing coaching or a number of other things as well. So definitely know the importance of support staff as well in the education space. So I guess I'll ask both of you before I play this commercial, and that commercial will be the last thing totally on this show. Your words of encouragement for teachers, and also any teacher that really inspired you, or support staff. It might even be the janitor, because the janitors can also be very important as well. So just tell me a quick story about a support staff person that really backed and helped you in your life and everything like that. So I know you got to go first, Leanne. So I'll start with you, Leanne, and then I'll go to Hannah, and then I'll play this quick 30-second commercial, and then we'll all get out of here.
Okay, well, thank you as a teacher, as a veteran teacher. I thank you for this. Number one. Number two, teachers, I see you. You're amazing. We are the most overworked, underpaid people on the planet, period. So I thank you for everything you do because we do go the extra mile. My fifth grade teacher was the one who was really there for me, Belle Elkis. She's no longer alive, God rest her soul. But she was amazing. And she was one of those people that I actually adopted part of her teaching philosophy of, okay, you can't, basically of the differently abled, and the idea of if you can't do it one way, let's do it another. It is doable and we'll find the way for you. And just treat people with kindness and respect. So
Yeah, I
that's it.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hannah, what about you? Any teacher that really inspired you? I mentioned one, I think, earlier and everything like that, or anybody that's even part of the support that. Maybe it was a guidance counselor, or maybe it was even, like I said earlier, a janitor, or somebody, even the doctors and the nurses that are also important in the school system as well. So anybody that really inspired you during your schooling years?
I did have some amazing teachers. I had some very artsy teachers too that just let me have that creative freedom to bring some things to life. But if I was going to shout out anybody, it would be my mom. She was a college professor for about 7 years while I was in high school and college to allow me the opportunity to take college courses for free until I was 21. So she has worked in a hospital my entire life. And during those years that I went to start high school, she began to teach at a college. That gave me the opportunity to be able to even be able to go to school. But I saw the struggle. I saw her working 24 hours, day in and day out, bringing the work home with her too, to grade tests and papers. She taught sonography, and she would only take 8 students a year, but they were with her the entire year. So it was like an ongoing multi-semester thing. She taught everything from physics to anatomy to chemistry, all within just her program. And I saw how absolutely undervalued and underappreciated she was, even by adults, even by the people who had 4.0s, who were, supposed to be like these top-rated students. They absolutely did not respect her in a lot of ways. Some of them were awesome, but seeing the struggle from like a home point of view made me realize like how hard it really is for teachers. Being in high school, I saw the students treating teachers like that. And then I would go home and I would see the repercussions of adults treating their teachers like that too. That weighs really heavy on them. They work so hard. They care so much. They put so much of their own life, time, finances into trying to provide the resources and education for people. And then they get all this negativity and backlash. Like they're not, perfect human beings. Like they are human. And they don't get enough credit for that, for what they actually put into it. And I think it doesn't matter how old you are or what grade you're in, you should always respect them. You should always respect your teacher and like give them the kindness too, because they're not just there to babysit. They're not just there to give you an A for doing nothing. Like they're trying to push you to become better. They're trying to educate you to learn the thing that you came there to learn. And I honestly feel like they all deserve raises. They all deserve the level of respect that a doctor receives, because they are some of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life.
I definitely agree with you, and I would not sleep on the importance of the other folks that are part of the support staff. Because like I said, grandma was a cafeteria worker, and you mentioned earlier nutrition, and a lot of times they're the ones that are helping with that nutrition and all along those lines, because she was a great cook when she was living. My grandma was, and she brought some of that cooking skill to the work as a cafeteria worker and all along those lines. And like I said, mom was a guidance counselor, and I do have friends that are still in that guidance counseling field, as well as those that are resource officers and helping with the security, as well as those that are the actual teachers and coaches and all along those lines. So I think that we need to recognize and know that those people also need to get some serious raises as well, because they are also not paid for the work that they do also. So definitely I'm a big fan of us making sure that everybody gets their worth. I'm also a big fan of even the fast food workers getting a raise as well. So there are a lot of folks that are doing some great work that need a greater pay, but definitely the cafeteria workers and the guidance counselors in our school systems, whether it's LA or whether it's New York or whether it's a small town like Warrenton, North Carolina, where I was going to school. But I'm gonna play this commercial from my good friends over there in Oklahoma and then get us all out of here. You two have been amazing guests. Glad to have both of you on. It was a pleasure to meet you, Hannah, in person, and hopefully you'll get back on some of these other shows and definitely get even your husband on and some of the other crew members. I'd love to have them on whenever they're available. Of course, I'd love to have Kwanzaa and Jose on as well. So just let them know that I'm coming looking for them, and I'd love to have their perspectives too and everything. And anybody else that wants to jump on, I hope that I didn't drive you too crazy at Hayti while you were here, and I hope that you enjoyed this podcast as well, because it's what I do. I just gather friends that I have made, new friends as well as old friends, and we just learn from each other in these kind of casual conversations. Been doing it now for about 5 years, and I enjoy these conversations. Probably interviewed over several hundred people, and it's always amazing the insights that we get. And I'll be cutting these into shorts and putting them on my TikTok and Instagram account as well, and I'll be tagging y'all on that also. So I'm going to play this commercial, get us on out of here. But you have both been, along with Scott, amazing guests, and I hope to see you on future shows. And who knows, and I know that Kwanzaa was talking about she wanted to come back to Hayti, so I might even be seeing you again next year and everything like that, because I do know that she was impressed with the center and said that she would like to do more with us in terms of partnership. So maybe we'll be seeing you sooner versus later and all along those lines. But it was fun meeting you, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you back in the building soon, as well as on this show. And the same for you, Leanne. Hope to see you back. I know you've been on a couple of times, but hope to have you back on in the near future and all along those lines. But it's been fun, and we're going to get on out of here. I know y'all got to get on to other parts of your life. I got to go find me some food and do call it the live dinner party for a reason. It's usually around dinner time, so I got to go find me some food. But it's been fun, and I look forward to catching y'all at a later time. But right now, let's catch out this commercial and get on out of here.
Thank you so much.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold.